Hello and welcome to Shay Zasaa and to a Zasaa unzipped. Might be a Zasaa zooms in, might be unzipped. I'm not sure. So when I'm not sure, I put it as unzipped so that, so we're putting it as unzipped. It might not be unzipped, but anyway. I've got my friend with me, Nkem. Nkem, thank you.
You're welcome.
We are talking about something today that is very dear to my heart because I feel like, well, I love learning, and I feel like for as long as you're not learning, you might as well be dead.
Yeah.
That's my thought. I don't understand why you wouldn't be learning. However, I have people in my family
Who think otherwise.
who think otherwise. Like, why are you learning again? You're like, haven't you done enough? You know what I mean? And it's not even like formal learning, but So tell us, what are you going to talk about today?
So I'm going to be talking about how to foster a lifelong love for learning, certainly in your children, and perhaps in grown-ups as well.
Let me even start with my children. There's some of my children that don't have it. So first of all, why is it important?
So, okay, I'll just talk about some sort of neuroscience field. It's called cognitive development. So cog comes from the root word to do with knowledge, and basically cognitive development is all about learning to learn, to think, to do things. When children are born, babies, they learn the sound of their parents' voices. They learn to distinguish mum's voice from dad's voice or other relatives or siblings. And then they start to learn how to grip things, how to hold on to things. And they soon start making associations with, if I clamp my fingers, I can keep this object in my hand. Yeah. And if I release my fingers, then it lets it go and stuff like that. And so that's how babies learn and gradually grow up to keep learning. But that depends very much on the environment they're in and how that desire to learn is whether it's enhanced or encouraged or killed. So we need to think about, as certainly parents or people, grown-ups who have children in our field of influence, we need to think about how we can encourage that curiosity for learning. I think that when children get to sort of, if you're a parent, that sort of age of 2, 3, where they start to ask questions and their favorite word is why.
Yeah, oh God.
And it drives you around the bend. And after a while, you tell them to shut up and just, And then gradually, children sort of learn that innate curiosity that we're all born with. But I think we need to resist that temptation to shut them up and encourage that curiosity and build up, suddenly set up an environment that they're keen to learn, ask questions, and keep growing in their learning.
So, but how can you set up that environment? Because I would have thought, my kids are grownish now, but you would think that you just by living, they're learning. Right.
They are, to a certain degree.
Are you saying we should be doing more than just that?
So we're not talking about learning that comes naturally, which we are to a certain degree, but we're talking about a love for learning. So there's a difference between learning.
I love learning.
There's a difference between learning because you find yourself in a situation where you have to, versus being curious and wanting to learn more, wanting to go out over and beyond to learn. And I think that's what we're talking about here. So how can we encourage children? Certainly, don't do everything for them. Don't answer all their questions. Mom, where are my shoes?
Where you left them is what I always say.
Well, you can resort to the African mums of in the left-hand corner of my nostril or something like that, or you can certainly encourage them to think about, okay, where did you leave them, and stuff like that. And this is the thing, I'll talk about another word. Metacognition is a word that I'm a tutor, I'm an English tutor, and I encourage my children with these words, with my students. This word in particular, metacognition, it's basically an awareness of your thought processes.
Okay.
And I know it sounds pretty, in fact, the way I say it to children...
I'm waiting for you to explain it.
The way I say it to children is metacognition means thinking about your thinking.
Okay.
So sometimes there are things that we do by rote. For example, getting dressed. I'm sure that you can get dressed in the dark.
Yeah.
Even if you're wearing a pair of trousers, okay, you might fumble around a bit, but you eventually put one leg in one side. Maybe you come out in the light and find out you've worn your trousers back to front. But there's a certain muscle memory that we use without having to think or engage active brain cells. But I'm talking about being conscious in the moment. There's certain tasks you cannot do without metacognition. So I'll take mathematics, for example. When children are learning things like the different operations, subtraction, addition, multiplication, and stuff like that, you can't just, it's not just muscle memory. It needs a bit more. So you might learn your timetable by rote. I know that 2 times 10 is 20. But if you then have a 2 or 3 step sum sum that requires 2 or 3 steps in the process, just knowing that 2 times 10 is 20 is not going
enough.
to get you to the end result. So, and that's where you need to use your metacognition and think about, okay, how do I get from step 1 to step 2? What can I do? Can I add something? Can I subtract or whatever? So I think that's important, to use your metacognition and to think about what you're doing. Be involved, be engaged in the moment.
But I think that is even so key, because just in real life, a lot of us are not engaged in the moment. We do so many things
By
like,
rote. Yep.
yeah, subconsciously, automatically, because we've done it enough times.
Yep.
And then you're not, it's almost like you're talking to your child. I'm not guilty of this, so stop judging me. You're talking to your child and you're not really listening. You know what I mean? You're not there. You're not present.
Not in the moment,
Because you're cooking or whatever it is you're doing that is keeping you away from being there. And I think it's so important, just in general, not just... okay, Connor, continue. So we've done metacognition. That's a new word I learned today. I hope I won't forget it.
Yes. Okay, so something I tell parents who bring their children to me to tutor is... there's so much more that you can do with your child, than that you have much more influence on your child than any tutor or any teacher does. I know that they spend a lot of time at school, but predominantly a lot of Nigerians grew up, certainly a lot of our generation grew up with having extra lessons outside of school. So it's something we do naturally. However, you need a bit more. So what they're learning or what they're being taught with a tutor or even in school, how much of it do they actually take on board? When they come home with homework, do you get engaged? I'm not suggesting that parents do homework with their children or for their children. Sorry, not for their children, but certainly with their children. It doesn't have to be every day. It could be a case of sitting down, going through the work, or even educating yourself, talking with the school teacher. What are you doing this week in maths or in English?
So, right? Let me explain. My first child.
Yes.
I did it all perfectly. I was ready to be involved. Yep. But I confused him. Because the way I learnt and the way he was learning was... I didn't understand anything he learned, and he did not understand anything I was teaching him. So after a while, I backed off, and then I didn't bother with the rest of them. So how can... For somebody like me, for example, who was raised in Nigeria, so the learning, the way they do it is completely different. And even just I remember when I came to do A-levels, and I did A-level maths, and the teacher called me one day, and he sat me down. He said, every single day your answers are right, but I don't understand your workings out. And he was like, so he could only give me the point for, because they mark for every step, and all my steps he didn't understand, but I always got it right. So he said, teach me, because I know you know what you're doing, because you always get the answer right, but I don't understand
how you get there.
You know what I mean? So it's little things like that where it's just a completely different thing. So when I was teaching my son, I was doing more harm than good.
I think it's a case of educating yourself. So there's a plethora of resources online. I appreciate that it might be overwhelming for you to just start doing a search to find stuff. Okay, let me use a specific example. So parents who are putting their children in for the 11 plus exam. Yeah. So in the UK, the 11 plus exam is an exam that children who are about 10 or 11 take to get into secondary school, certain secondary schools that are called selective or private schools. Now, it's quite a competitive exam because there are lots of children going for so few places. One of the things that I say to parents is, encourage or foster an environment where learning is fun at home. So it's not a chore. Go and do your work. Oh, everybody's battling. And I appreciate that parents are busy working. They've got more than one child sometimes, and they're torn in different directions. But things like reading can be a family affair. You can read together. Reading shouldn't be punishment. For me, it was the opposite growing up. Not reading was punishment. I loved reading that much. So reading can be, you can choose a book together. And a lot of parents say, oh, I want my child to read the classics. Parents, be honest, have you read the classics yourself? They can be quite difficult to read. And if you're not somebody who loves them or, is inclined that way, they're challenging. So it's more off-putting for many children rather than encouraging them.
Do you know, it's so funny. I saw a quote the other day that said, if you don't like reading, it's because you haven't found the right book.
It is
like
true.
that.
It is very true. There is something out there for everybody. It doesn't have to be fiction. That's another mistake a lot of parents make. It's got to be fiction. It doesn't have to be fiction. It can be a biography. It could be, if a child loves football, for example, there are lots of footballers who've written biographies. It could be anything that appeals to the child. So that's one thing. Choose books together, read together. Let it be something your child looks forward to. You have a period of time after dinner or whatever it is, even when they're in the bath, read a chapter, talk about it. It's better to read a chapter a day and discuss it in depth rather than reading a book a week and then not. Because a lot of times children say, I've read the book. A lot of schools have reading. You must read, a certain number of books. And then you say, what was it about? It was about a boy who went to the woods. Okay. Good for him. And, so it's more important to say, okay, I really like this part of the book.
And I think you can read a book and not even understand.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? You can
that
just
goes without saying.
read the words.
I can tell you that I get children to read and I say, okay, what have you just read? And then they go to start reading the lines back to me. And I'm like, no, that's not a summary. Can you give me a summary of what you've read? Yeah. So reading is certainly one thing. Playing games together. It could be word games, could be Sudoku, could be Monopoly, could be whatever. I find that it's more engaging for a child when the whole family is involved. A lot of parents ask about vocabulary. How can I improve my child's vocabulary? Oh, they don't know lots of words, especially in these days of text speak and everything is abbreviated. You can play lots of word games. One of the games I played, with my kids when they were growing up, my boys are almost 18 and 16 now, was we would get cardboard paper and we would choose certain words. There's some word list reputed to be 11 plus word list. Don't believe that hype. But anyway, we chose some words at random and then we would make posters and then we would look in the dictionary, find synonyms, words with similar meanings, antonyms, words with opposite meanings. And then the challenge was you had to try to use a certain number of words within the week. Slip them into conversation somehow,
wow.
and you sort of, it was, and everybody was trying, and simple conversation, and somebody would throw in a word. Now, I'm not suggesting we just use words like a samurai sword and throw big words around the place. I'm talking about using them within context that makes sense, and I think that's a more organic way of teaching children vocabulary. Certainly, parents being involved like that, or the whole family being involved, makes it a more interesting prospect for kids than sending them off to a room on their own to go and do 10 books stacked.
Well, it's funny because one of the things when I used to do parenting classes, one of the things I always used to say was that I believe that there's no such thing as bad children, just bad parenting. And that the onus is on the parents. It's all about our willpower and our decisions. Obviously, I know that I'm generalizing, but I honestly believe that, that, it's down to the parents and how we choose to do things.
Agree.
And sometimes, for whatever reason, some valid reasons, it's just easier to stick them in front of a TV.
It's absolutely
easier not to get involved. It's not, and I think we have to decide as parents that we're going to be, we chose to have those kids, and it's our responsibility. You know what I mean? Because I think sometimes we just shirk our responsibility.
We've birthed the kids now. Let the universe raise them.
And I think it's so funny because I was saying this about my last child the other day. I was like, I didn't raise this one. Her siblings raised her. You know what I mean? Because it got to a point where I'm like, please, teach her, Joe. You know what I mean? Do you know how many years I taught you for? You teach her, which has its benefits, but also she's lost. So she's got a richer. It's like there's pros and cons to it.
I mean, I'm sure that definitely. The funny thing is, in this day and age, it's so much easier to rely on your technology raising your child.
Yeah.
When, so I said my oldest is almost 18. Obviously, that was sort of the time when iPads were becoming a bit popular, and a lot of people would put a cartoon or something and hand it to the child. And I could see the temptation. I could totally see why anybody would want to do that. But you get to a point where you're like, okay, do I want my child totally dependent on technology? Or do I want them to have developed their own thinking skills? And I'll talk about this. The entertainment that most of our children are growing up with now is entertainment that doesn't allow them think or reason or problem solve. When a lot of our generation were growing up, we had to either invent our own toys, come up with our own entertainment, rely on our imagination, create worlds beyond what we could see. Now, a lot of the entertainment, certainly a lot of video games, everything is done for the children. They just sit there and it's a passive exercise.
Yeah.
There's not much thinking engaged in, no troubleshooting. I mean, to a certain degree there is, I can appreciate that. And this sort of hampers and hinders their ability to think when it comes to their learning. So in a more formal education setting, they're crippled. They just don't know how to, I know I need to get to that point, but I'm here. And what do I need to do? And they can't articulate what steps they need to. They can't even come up. It's getting to a point where it's becoming an epidemic.
Wow.
COVID certainly didn't help.
Yeah.
Because a lot of children lost those skills that you gain from social interaction with other kids, muscle memory from holding a pen or a pencil. I watched a previous show of yours where you were talking about handwriting.
Yeah.
You would be amazed at how many children, their handwriting is illegible, simply because they didn't form, the muscles weren't developed enough. They weren't writing at home, obviously, when they weren't in school and things like that. So I would say that a lot of responsibility lies with the parents. Don't wait for your child to be 4 and go to school and then, the teacher starts teaching them. There's so much you can do at home. Teach them letters while they're in the bathtub. Get those sticky letters you can put in the bathtub. Play around. Let them learn how to spell their name even before they go to school. In a fun way. I'm not saying send your child to be PhD level when they're in nursery school. But make it fun so that education, learning becomes something they enjoy.
Okay. So, my youngest child, you're smiling. I have to learn for myself now.
Go ahead.
My youngest child is about to be 13.
Yes.
Is it too late for certain things? No. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I'm obviously not going to put her in the bath and be doing numbers. So what can I do so can you speak to the slightly older children that are still within, I won't bother speaking about my 22-year-old. I'll leave that and just hope to Jesus. But
at that point, he's an adult.
He's an adult, yeah. So the ones that are still children but are older, so between 13 and 17, what can I do now to foster this love for learning?
So what do they enjoy?
Football.
Can we find biographies, documentaries?
So, no, actually, I do that with him. I'm actually really good because he likes reading, so he has quite a few football.
There you go.
Yes.
Can we write a newspaper article about a footballer or footballing event? Can he create an imaginative, creative story, fiction about football, anything, a footballer, surrounding a football.
So it doesn't matter because you see, okay, so I've got it right with him. But I'm like, everything football. Can't we go outside?
There's nothing, you see, this is the problem. I think we need to compromise, okay? So at the moment, football is his thing.
Yeah.
If you can use football as the point where then what are you complaining about?
Okay, so I'm okay with him. Okay, but her now.
Yes.
What does she like? She's a social butterfly. We had this conversation
fair
earlier.
enough. Yeah.
She, funny enough, she's excelling in, she's doing very well in school. But I do feel like, like any of my children love learning like I love learning. They don't hate it. Well, some of them do. But you know what I mean? They don't love it. And I just feel that's such a shame.
Can you force a love for learning where there isn't? I don't know that you can. But again, are we talking about learning as in the formula education or just a curiosity about the world around them?
I was probably talking about both, to be fair. And it's more formal that they struggle with.
To be honest, if I go by my kids, I think if they had a choice, they may not be in school. No, if education were optional, they'd probably opt out. And I think that's the same for many children. To a certain degree, I'm sure that would have been the same for us.
It's funny because there was a show that we did. I don't know if you saw it. Wanu was here. My husband was here.
Okay.
And Wanu was talking about this. And Wale turned to her and said, "But did you like school?"
There you go. So in fairness, I
loved school.
I've always enjoyed learning. Have I always enjoyed school? No. There's certain aspects of school I could have done without.
Yeah.
But to learn, I love to learn. I see a word and I'm thinking, oh, I've not seen that word before. What does it mean? How could I use it? And I hear it somewhere else and I'm getting excited. But then, did I always want to be in a classroom doing calculus or trigonometry or Pythagoras theorem or whatever it was? Not necessarily. So to a certain degree, I can empathize with them not necessarily wanting the formal education. But there's a certain curiosity, I think, that sometimes I worry about my kids lacking. Something is on the staircase that doesn't belong there, because not much belongs on the staircase apart from maybe the carpeting
and then they just walk past.
And they walk past not once,
no,
twice, not 3 times. And I'm thinking, where is the curiosity to wonder?
Wait, but what's the curiosity there? I need to find this.
Why is this thing
here?
here? Who put this thing here?
But maybe it's them.
No, mine wouldn't leave. Mine wouldn't leave anything on the staircase. Okay. Maybe I or my husband would leave something because we intend to take it up when we're going upstairs, and so we don't forget, because we're in our dotage now, so we may forget. So, but none of them are curious enough to say, oh, Mom, Dad, why is this thing here? Are you getting rid of it? Is it going upstairs? Can I take it up? I'm going up. There's no sort of, if it's not in their immediate, I must say, certainly for my younger one, more than for the older one, because the older one is a bit more curious. Younger one, if it's not within this moment of now, right, present, current time.
No, I walk into the sitting room and I say, okay, is it that you people, does this place look, do those shoes, maybe they can't see it, because I'm thinking sometimes maybe they can't see it.
I think that I've tried, my husband and I have this discussion and he doesn't get it, and sometimes I'm trying to say, let me play devil's advocate for a moment. Maybe they really can't see it. Maybe there's something that's a bit different from the way they see the world around them, or the way they experience the world around them.
I'm with you
that
on
is
that.
Different from, because how can you not see it?
Because this is what, and when I said to my son, he said, well, I do now. Like the moment you point it out, I see it. But I'm like, how did you miss it? So I think maybe there's something, and maybe this is back to what has gone into their brain on a. I think
that the way that we're learning, or the way that we learned, is also different from the way that our children are learning. You've acknowledged the way you learned in Nigeria is different from the way things are taught here, or were taught here when you came here. And even now, between when you were doing your A-levels and now, there's been a huge change. I mean, there's all this research into education and how children learn differently, and stuff like that. But again, I think the world that they live in, a lot of things affect them. My children cannot understand. I mean, they have never known a time when TV could not be paused or could not be rewound. They don't understand it. Yeah. I said to my younger son the other day, I said, "You're spoiled," and he said, "Mom, the fact that he said I'm not spoiled. I'm just living in a different time from how you were raised." And the fact that you were deprived as a child doesn't mean that.
But it's so true, and I think that's such a key point, that there's so much. Like I always say this thing about in fact, it was because a friend of mine, we were talking about marriages and how it seems like a lot of marriages, younger marriages, they don't have the resilience, they don't have the thing. And I was like, but they grew up in a microwave generation where everything is like this. And so if it isn't working, then we move on to the next thing, or we get another, you know what I mean? So I guess one has to even pay attention to that in how we respond to
you can tell, and even we are affected by that. Attention span. How long does it take for your attention span to wander? How many times are you focusing? Oh, right. Let's be honest. How many times have you focused on one task? You're watching TV and you're just watching TV. Or are you watching TV and fiddling with your phone?
But that's because we're women, we multitask.
No, I disagree. Well, I think we must call a spade a spade.
No, but it's true. You're right.
Our attention spans, including those of us who grew up with a longer attention span, it's waning. You can't get anybody to read paragraphs and paragraphs. You've got to paraphrase.
Yeah.
When I send emails out, I must bullet point. Or I write one sentence per paragraph. It kills my soul every time I do it. But if I want it to be read, if I want the point to be picked up, that's how I must do it. People don't take the time or the trouble to assimilate things, to take things. I mean, people respond to me asking about something in the email that they have clicked to reply to. So
they haven't read.
My husband always tells me, take a breath, don't copy and paste, because my go-to is copy and paste. As I said in the email to which you are replying.
But I do that on WhatsApp. I just, you point the finger up like that. So, but yeah, no, oh God. So what's the solution then? I mean, I guess.
I think we must do the best that we can in the circumstances. Just be there in the moment and model. Don't do as I say. Not do as I do. Model for your children. Yeah. If you want your children reading, read. If you want your children learning, learn.
Yeah, you see, so fun. There's a picture of my son my eldest son, when he was like 3, couldn't read, couldn't read. And literally, he's sitting down with a newspaper because his dad is sitting, because Wale was always on the bed. So they're beside each other, and he can't read what he's got. But that whole thing of modelling.
But then he picked that up and thought this is something that dad does.
It now, sharp.
But who knows what the benefits of the, you don't know. I think it's important to model.
Seconds.
Wow, that went fast.
Running out. We're running out. Yeah, so no, I'm just saying so that so model.
But model and be there for your children. Be with them in the trenches. Don't abandon them to social media or tutors. Social media is raising our children these days, or tutors. Be with them. Talk to the tutors. Talk to your school teachers. Find out how you can support. It's a 3-way triangle. Yourself, the child, and the teacher.
Thank you. Well, so now you know how to foster a love of lifelong learning in your kids. I mean, like I said at the beginning, I think it's so important that we're learning all the time, because if not, then what's the point? But let us know what you think. We're out of time. See ya.